We good to go? Thank you, Prime Ministers of Fiji and Cook Islands, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies. Welcome to the Pacific Pavilion on this, the second last day. My name is Satyendra Prasad. I'm Fiji's permanent rep to United Nations in New York, and it is my honor to facilitate this press conference. Prime Minister and of Fiji and Chair of the Pacific Small Island Developing States, Excellencies, you will all agree that we are now at a critical juncture at the COP24. The Paris rulebook text is now firmly in the hands of the Presidency and the supporting ministerial pairs. So now more than ever, the process needs to be as transparent as possible to ensure a sense of country ownership by the close of the process tomorrow. There are some concerns over drift to the lowest common denominator option, and this is concerning as we move closer to the end of the agreed negotiation time. Our rulebook outcome is very much within the reach. Substantial progress is being made by the teams. And there are issues about clarity and quality in the rule book, and the Pacific Islands is really encouraging for greater consensus and support in securing a great outcome on that. We have concluded a hugely successful Talanoa dialogue process. This has been very widely acknowledged. At the Talanoas this week, countries provided helpful stories, insights that have fed into the COP24 and that have brought new insights into the global ambition. With the conclusion of the Talanoa dialogue and the IPCC 1.5, it remains to be seen whether the countries use this opportunity to create the conditions that are necessary for a much higher ambition in 2019. We, the 14 members of the Pacific Small Island Developing States, having met yesterday and over the entire 2-week period to deliberate on the state of play at COP24, have put forth the following statement, which will be read by the Chair of the Pacific Small Island Developing States, the Honorable Prime Minister of Fiji, with the support of our Pacific Island counterparts. As we know, Pacific Island counterparts are in various other meetings. They all send their apologies, but they're all represented here by their officials. And I now invite His Excellency, Prime Minister of Fiji, to read the declaration on behalf of the Pacific leaders. Thank you very much, Prime Minister.
Thank you. Good morning, Prime Minister of Cook Islands. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, members of the press. Members of the press, we, the heads of government, ministers and heads of delegation from the Pacific Small Island Developing States, the PSIDS, welcome the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, special report on the impacts of global warming of 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. We call for the meaningful inclusion of the special report 1.5 degrees centigrade in the COP24 decision text. We express deep concern at the findings of the special report, which conclude that the effects of human-induced climate change are worse than previously projected, and that the risks to PSIDS from loss and damage are extensive. These include, amongst others, marine ecosystems impacts, sea level rise and extreme weather events, livelihoods and the threatened survival of island communities, particularly those living on coral atolls. Sea level rise also undermines the performance of our maritime baselines and maritime boundaries. We also welcome the Samoa Declaration on Climate Change in the context of sustainable development for SIDS, adopted during the inter-regional preparatory meeting for mid-term review of the Samoa Pathway in Apia on 1 November 2018. We welcome the bold declaration endorsed by leaders in Nauru that firmly reasserts that climate change represents the single greatest threat to our livelihoods, security and well-being of the peoples of the Pacific, and also reaffirm commitment to progress the implementation of the Paris Agreement. We are alarmed that current global efforts to combat climate change are insufficient to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. We therefore urge the world to pursue all opportunities to maximize climate action, including forest management, renewable energy, and others highlighted by the special report. Limiting warming to 1.5 degrees is a matter of survival for PSIDS. We reiterate, ladies and gentlemen, that limiting warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade remains feasible. We urge all parties to act now. We are deeply alarmed at the growing number of people displaced by the impacts of climate change. While we acknowledge that the Global Compact for Migration recognizes climate change as a driver of displacement and migration, we call for the development of an international legal regime and support framework based on human rights to protect people displaced by climate change. We urgently call on the world to take dramatic steps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, in particular, calling on countries to significantly raise the ambition of their NDCs. In this regard, we call on international partners and financial institutions to support efforts towards a low-carbon development pathway. We call on all OECD countries to quickly phase out their use of coal by 2030, and for all other countries to phase out their use of coal by 2040. There must be no expansion of existing coal mines or the creation of new ones. We affirm that the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and its Paris Agreement are the key international legal instruments to address climate change. We look forward to the completion of ambitious implementation guidelines for the Paris Agreement at COP24. In this regard, the inclusion of loss and damage, Article 8 of the Paris Agreement, in the implementation guidelines on matters relating to transparency, finance, technology, development and transfer, capacity building, and the global stocktake is an absolute necessity. In terms of supporting the pre-2020 ambition, we underscore that it is critically important that the Talanoa Dialogue delivers a decision that mandates the increase in the ambition of all NDCs to deliver a pathway that would limit warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial level. We call on all parties to support the COP presidency of Fiji and Poland to ensure that the outcome of the Talanoa Dialogue delivers its purpose in guiding the preparation of revised and ambitious NDCs. We note with concern the growing frequency and severity of climate-related hazards experienced in PSIDS region and the escalating cost of rehabilitation and recovery that PSIDS are having to bear. We call on all parties, in particular developed country parties and non-party stakeholders, to provide scaled-up finance, including risk finance mechanisms and public finance, to support national efforts to address these worsening impacts and loss and damage. We further call for enhanced, efficient, simplified, and timely access to these resources. We are deeply concerned, ladies and gentlemen, about the adverse impacts of climate change on the ocean. We call for a focused work program under the Paris Agreement to develop enhanced strategies in collaboration with UN agencies, regional organizations, and civil society, amongst others, to assist our efforts to protect and conserve the ocean. We call on development partners to support initiatives that can develop climate change adaptation measures and capacity building associated with protecting and restoring the coastal and marine environment. We welcome the entry into force on 1st January 2019, the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete ozone layer. The Kigali Amendment currently offers the greatest short-term opportunity to avoid up to 1 degree centigrade of global warming, which is a lifeline of time for the world. We urge all parties to the Montreal Protocol to ratify and implement the Kigali Amendment with urgency. We underscore the growing threat to peace and security brought about by the impacts of climate change. We strongly encourage the UN Secretary General to appoint a special representative of the Secretary General on climate and security. We firmly believe that the COP24 in Katowice, Poland, is a pivotal moment in human history. The world must take heed of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC special report on the impacts of global warming of 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, and take dramatic and urgent steps to decarbonize the global economy and assist those at the front line of climate change impacts. Ladies and gentlemen, our future is at stake, and we only have 12 years. That ends my statement, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard the ambassador from New York, who said that this is the second last day. This is my last day, and I wish you all well in the deliberations in the last day tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. We'll take one question each. Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister, for that bold statement on your last day here on behalf of the Pacific. We will have, as you'd appreciate, we're time constrained, enough time for 2 questions if we can have a question for each of the Prime Ministers. And yeah, and please introduce yourself.
Prime Ministers, thank you. Ben Doherty from The Guardian. One of the key elements of the statement this morning, this afternoon rather, has been around phasing out coal by 2030 by OECD countries. The United States has indicated this week it intends to continue using fossil fuels for the foreseeable future. Australia yesterday announced it was prepared to underwrite new coal projects in Australia. Are you concerned that developed Pacific Rim countries aren't sufficiently supporting decarbonisation?
I've made a statement that we request that everybody increases their ambition, and that goes for everyone, all countries. Thank you.
Thank you. One last.
Associated Press, Monika Ścisłowska. The basic question today is, are these talks successful? Do they have a chance of being successful? Will all the points on the agenda be met as expected? Are you hopeful for them?
I'll pass that question to.
We always live in hope, madam. And if you were at the national statement session yesterday afternoon, it was really comforting to hear everybody, without exception, singing the same tune about the urgent need to address climate change. So we live in hope, yes.
Are there any obstacles today, a day before the conference is to end?
There's always obstacles, but we live in hope, as I said, and we're optimistic that those will be addressed before the conclusion of the conference tomorrow.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our press conference for today. Thank you all very much, and we hope you will all also do a bit in the next 18 hours or so to make sure we have a very successful COP outcome. And thank you, Prime Ministers. Naka Vakelavu.